Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me here at the press conference for the Dynasty Dogs uh, fantasy clown team. And so wanted to just invite each of you in to kind of, as we did a deep dive on the team and where we are and maybe where we came from to get to this point and sort of the progression that we've seen and how pleased we are with where the team is right now and where it's heading to. So kind of part of that it's important to recognize, I think, is really where we started when we drafted this team back in 2021. We had a 2-12 record that first year, and then last year finished 4-10. So as we just finished up week 4, we have a record of 2-2. So of course we want to progressionally get better each and every year. And as we look at the team, we play the Blazing Asians this week, and so we're getting ready for the week 5 matchup and really excited about that. And it's going to be a real test, definitely a real test this week as we prepare for a 2-2 team as well. So really going to be the battle of 2-2 teams. And, talk to Lamar, he seems to be ready to go at the quarterback position. And, it looks like we're going to give Brock Purdy the start in the Superflex this week. And pretty excited to hopefully have Zay Jones back this week over in, he's going to be coming to us from London. So, excited about that with Pittman and Michael Thomas, Jacoby Myers, and our dual tight end. We have Cole Kmet gonna come to us tonight, and then Mark Andrews on Sunday to round out the starting lineup. So really pleased with where it is, even with any buys that we might face. And we do have Eli Moore on bye, and Traylon Burks on. We're gonna have to give him a week off this week. So he can get back in action. So really pleased with the receiver group. I did omit Breece Hall and Cam Akers, really hoping that both of these guys continue to get expanded roles and can hold us over, really until, we get to the week 7 bye for Breece Hall and Cam Akers week 13 bye. So just had to check that out. But, we had some injuries at the running back position with Jamal Williams. We really counted on that. And, I feel like we maybe overdrafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's on our bench as well. And, always looking for an opportunity to pick up running backs. I just feel like as we're getting better progressionally, we never want to sell the future when running backs are so volatile. So giving up maybe one of our receivers or one of our quarterbacks in those quality rooms where we feel like we're especially at the quarterback and at the tight end position, we feel like we're as good as anybody else in the league. And so we don't want to give up that position of strength to go after a onesie position of like running back where it turns over so quickly. We just want to keep getting better. And if we can not, hurt our position of strength and before the draft and there's an opportunity to go win, then we take that. But if there's not an opportunity to go win, which we don't know here in week 5, if we get to week 10 and we're 5-5 or better, and you are ready to make that playoff, push, then we might look to get, make a selective, depending on where the injuries fall on our team to really enhance that running back room. And, if for some reason we get hit by the receiver injury bug, depending on who it is, so like what we feel like is if Michael Pittman gets hurt, then we're probably not going to do much selling because we're going to feel like we're in a position where Michael Pittman comes back, we're going to get better just because. Now, if Michael Thomas or Zay Jones get hurt, where we don't feel like they are likely to have as good a year next year, then we might push in a chip to go get a piece that we think we can use for this year and next year, and it would be worth us as making a trade. So it really depends on where those injuries happen. And so right now, week 5, we don't really know what's going to happen injury-wise. So we're going to kind of ride this thing out, try to keep this thing as close to the making progressional progress. We always want to make progress every year. And we're just going to keep kind of getting a little better. And we really are happy with Breece. And we're really happy with the change of scenery for Cam Akers, too. I feel like that's got us a shot to make those picks that we did way back in 2021 become a little better. And I wanted to bring up some of what we did so that we could really look at it, because I think that tells the story a little bit of how we got to the team where it is right now. So as I bring it up, kind of bringing up the draft. This is how the draft started. We had the 3rd pick overall. We really went quarterback heavy. And it kind of happened just because it's what the drafting room gave us. And so I always say, people that know me now know that we like to draft quarterbacks, and so we tend to not draft quarterbacks anymore because they draft it to a point where we get other value. But the third pick back in 2021, I feel really good about taking Lamar Jackson there. And so you'd say, well, gee, you took Trey Lance in the second round, but back then Trey Lance, that was the right pick. Like that was the right pick to kind of keep, if we're going to go quarterback heavy right there, I feel good that we didn't take Diggs or Jones or Metcalf or Mixon, all the guys we had a chance at. So then we came back with Fields, which that created the ability for Lance to not be good, and we're still okay at the position. Like we still are at the position. But as you notice there, where we traded away the Tannehill pick, we didn't like any of the quarterbacks there. Like we didn't feel like we needed to take Watson there at that time because there were some things going on with him back in his Texans days. And so it was easier to just trade the pick. I didn't want Rodgers or Stafford on this team because we felt like they were just older than what we were trying to build. So it was easier to kind of trade the pick. Otherwise, I would have probably honestly taken Javonte Williams and taken a running back there because that would have fit the build of youth. And that wouldn't have worked out real well either. So I feel like it was a good miss. It was a good way to kind of maneuver for the extra first round pick in 2022. And it just made a lot of sense going there. And then we just, at that point, when we take Deshaun Watson on the other end, that got somebody's attention. People were like getting scared, like, oh no, all the quarterbacks are gone. So we really accomplished the goal. And if you notice after Watson, then we started having the mistakes sort of happen. And not they were real big mistakes, but we started to see Brady come off the board. He's out of the league. Zach Wilson had a good game, but he's been struggling since then. Now Hurts and Tua were really good. But I would, and then Wentz is out of the league, and we got Daniel Jones and Mac Jones. And as you see there, we were just hitting it hard. We were able to acquire Andrews in a trade, and I'm going to show some trades here in a minute so you can kind of see. But then when we started picking the other positions, as you notice, I went away from quarterback totally and went youth. So Akers, he's been a disappointment for us. It was a miss. It was definitely a miss. But, disappointment there. And then we have, Pittman and Moore. And those are guys that are pillars part of my team still. And we were drafting them in the 9th and 10th round. Irv Smith, that's why I kept him, honestly, because we drafted him with high capital. And Jamal Williams, we have too much invested into him before we could start missing. And so then we got lucky with Myers, naturally getting them there. And, kind of laughing about some of these guys, Travis Fulgham, kind of a moment in time that we were just sort of taking them. And so that's where the draft misses really happened. But really pleased as I look back at that draft with the information given then and how we drafted the team. And I think it allows us to be at this point. Looking at the 21 draft, and this is just our 22 draft, this is just a rookie draft and just some of the things that we were taking here. Obviously, we took Breece Hall number 1, and we were the worst team with that 2-12 record, right? So we're kind of going there, but we also had some additional picks. And so we were able to get Treylon Burks and Kenny Pickett. And so, we were able to kind of force the issue here. Now, in this draft, if you remember right, what we were able to do is get the top 2 quarterbacks in the draft. And then we decided, hey, at that point, let's fade it because we knew we were late on running backs. And if you notice, we weren't sure, I wasn't sure when we drafted this what Pierce was going to be. I think I had Spiller rated higher, so it would have been a draft miss. Not that Willis has been anything, but it was just kind of a control mechanism for the draft of taking that quarterback and to kind of force Ritter into a spot where it was earlier than he really should go, or Corral earlier than he should go. And that's what that did. And it's really about, kind of marketability. And as you notice here, I was still taking Breece Hall number 1 because he was the best player. Like, we're not taking Pickett number 1. We're just trying to force people to move the quarterbacks up in the draft. And that's kind of what, so that they have to trade ahead of it to go get their quarterbacks, because that's the cheapest place to buy quarterbacks. If I don't sell any, then you've got to buy them through the draft. So you're going to have to trade with other people in the league, and you're going to have to go get the quarterback there. Very similar to the NFL, to be honest. It's kind of the same formula. Like, I didn't create it. I just sort of copy the NFL. I fade running backs like the NFL does. I basically pay the quarterbacks, and it kind of works in the fantasy game when you have multi-quarterback starters, because they become the limited position with the highest output of scoring and the most 100% of the action player. So when the backup comes in, he still has 100% of the snaps. When the backup running back comes in, he's on a timeshare. When the backup receiver comes in, he's just slides into the number 3 spot, and so the number 2 moves to the number 1. And so, and the same tight ends are a little bit like quarterbacks. They kind of go into the spot of them. So I try to be really strong in those positions. However, my opponents can find a tight end that gets playing time. Like, you can always find a schloozy tight end to put in there, and you catch lightning in a bottle. So it's not a control mechanism. And quite honestly, with our 3 tight ends, I was looking at the waiver wire to kind of say, okay, if I were to drop quarterbacks and put other guys on there, and we'll address that a little bit later and before we get your questions. But, this is kind of how we do it. So in 2022, same idea. This was the same person, but as you notice, he actually chose to pick Richardson 1, even though he had 1 and 2. But my goal was to see how many times this year, without me picking Bijan, is to try to see if Bijan would fall, because I had him as my number 1 player. So my goal was to see how far, and I actually thought there was a world that he might take both. Matt might take both Bryce Young and Richardson to fill 2 quarterback spots and drop me to Bijan. Now, I didn't. And, that was fine, but I was sure ready to take Bijan if he was there at 103. I just kind of take the guy in the order. Like, I just don't look at my needs. I just draft the order that I have. And so, realistically, I mean, as it works, and I had traded away the 2nd round pick. So as you'll see in my trades, later on. So, that's kind of, what we have there. But, basically, I took Shoemaker, and then when we get down to the 4th round, there's not much there. I did have Michael Wilson in my world, so he went a little bit earlier than I was willing. But if he would have been there, I was taking Tucker and Wilson as my kind of late round flyers. And so if Wilson would have been there, I would have taken him. I mean, that's who I have, and I've got many copies of him. I mean, Tucker's my most owned player, so I obviously had him higher than most people. And then Wilson was, one of my late round, flyers that I have. And so, and if I would have had to go to one of the lower quarterbacks that didn't get drafted, the Cleveland or I was drafting some of the Cleveland quarterbacks and some of the Raiders quarterback, I would have maybe taken even A.T. Perry ahead of that, because that was a guy that I was drafting in a lot of places. And multi-tight ends are heavy premiums. I was taking Darnell Washington. So those are players that I did have higher than the masses on my list. So I just try to always honor the list, and that way it creates the portfolio I'm looking for across the board, and really to try to become successful. So that's kind of some of what I really do as I build a team. And I would expect that, as we look ahead to 2024, the draft there, of course, I'm have an eye to look at running backs. I'm unhappy with how the running back room has gone out. I know that I'll pick up enough rookie receivers as we go that I'll catch a lightning in the bottle. And, we're obviously looking to replace, everybody outside of Pittman. Pittman's going to be young here, and Myers is actually kind of young. I feel like he's having kind of the career year, though. So, we'll kind of see how that goes. And I'm not counting on that same production of what we see this year from him, maybe next year, depending on what happens with the quarterback room there. Because that's really some of what I look at as well is the quarterback room, right? I mean, that's who gets these receivers the ball, and that makes a big difference in what we have as far as that goes. So I guess I always like to look at that in that respect, and that's obviously something that we are looking for in that regard with this squad. Looking ahead at what we've bet. So right now, 4 years, $30 a year is what this team costs. So, I'm always looking at, okay, how do I make money? First place is 200, second place is 100, third place is 60. So third place gets me 2 times my money. So if I just come in third place, I've got to do that every other year, right, to break even. That's where the break even is. To win first place is 6.67 times my money. So I need to do that every 6 years, basically, to break even. So as my goal always is, right, like I'd like to win between 3 and 4 times. So somewhere around 3.5 times per team per 10-year period is the goal. So it's not really critical that we win in year 1 or year 2 or year 3, but I like to begin to be making progress. So I get real concerned if the team starts to flop around. And I do have teams like that. I have teams that we started bad and then we were second place in year 2, and then all of a sudden in year 3 we're bad again. And if we are bad in year 4, I think it's a bad team. Like obviously I'm like follow the trends. I had some teams last year. I was thinking about a team that I couldn't imagine won, but it did. It won actually overall with a bunch of schloozies at receiver. And it was year 1 in a startup, and I'm still kind of baffled by how it's winning, but it's winning again this year. So I'm like, well, the team construction must be better than I think. And, that's kind of, what we actually get there. So that's always good. I want to pull up, I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to pull up a couple things that I think, maybe make some sense for the, just kind of some of the analytics that I look at when I start to begin to look at what is this team, how is it performing, I guess you could say. And, so I always want to look at, what's it doing in performance. And, this is what the weekly scores should be for each of the teams in our league. And so I always like to look at that and say, okay, how are we doing? As you can see, I'm this dark green here. And, we're somewhere. The peak is going to be somewhere around that 125 range is where I am every week, or where I should be. So, that's going to beat some teams and it's going to lose to some others. And that gives me an idea of where the mean should be, or what I should really reasonably expect from it. And then when we start to look at what I like about this chart is it kind of gives you the idea of, how many times can this team really finish in first place versus 12th place. And you kind of get a feel for, okay, where does this, I'm the blue here, what is the likelihood, that I'm going to finish in first place, or maybe in 6th place, which gets me to the playoffs. This ran 100, I ran 100 simulations of the league with this schedule to kind of get these results, to give me a good feel for, okay, what kind of team do I have here? And, what does the team look like? And, so some of this is now this is more in word form data, but I like to kind of look at it a little bit to get an idea of what my win total is. So remember, last year I had 4 wins, so I really want to make sure I outdo that. And I also try to outdo this projection, because this doesn't really account for the injuries or what moves I'm about to make. And I feel like I can outperform this by at least 2 wins, but that's what I'm kind of looking for. But I like to look at my total overall points and see what I'm trending for. And so I try to run this, a couple times a year on each of my teams, so that I have a good feel for where we are. And then this is the wins and where we are. And as you can see, there's some likelihood that I'm below 4, not really at 4, but then when we get above 4, there's a lot of likelihood. And even, here when we're getting closer to the 7 or the 6 or the 7 range, where, it's a borderline playoff team. So, I have a little work to do to get to the playoffs. Of course, that's the goal this year. I do have, some real, a real rivalry game against El Warzilla. So that's something that we're trying to, really do, outperform him. And even though the data points actually say that we should not outperform him. So I think that's, something for us to kind of be aware of as well, is that, we really, are not on pace to outperform, but, it's something that, we really want to, try to do. We'd like to outperform. I'm going to pull up some of the trades that we've pulled off in this league, and really to kind of just highlight, what the moves that we're making. And they're not really in any order, but it's kind of a fun thing. This was a trade I just made recently. Just basically sent off a 4th round pick for a starting quarterback, and actually I'm starting Dobbs in some leagues. He's not going to start here, but it just kind of allows me to continually use those bench spots or something. I mean, I'm looking on the waiver wire, and guys like Abdullah or Dearness Johnson or Braxton Berrios or Khalif Raymond, or and the tight ends, there's actually some pretty good ones, Johnny Smith, Granson, or Smythe, but there's a lot of them, and I have 3, so I'd have to have 3 injuries before I'd ever even start any of these guys. And like, those guys will never start, but Dobbs, somebody else would start, so he has value to other people, where those other guys really have very little value to other people either. They'd have to have a whole bunch of injuries to even get near starting them. And if they were trying to start them, they probably won't, they're not going to really affect their team at all. So having them on my bench doesn't really if they're not going to do me any good, they're not going to do anybody else any good. It's kind of a waste of time. here's a trade that I actually moved a quarterback before the year, and the reason I like this is this got me I had made a mistake and traded away my third pick in the draft, and I thought this gave me a reasonable shot to maybe get a shot at Bijan. And I'm like, in return, at minimum, I got the quarterback, which I did for Fields, and then I also get Andrews. So I really do well at the position. So that seemed to make a lot of sense to me to go there. I got Zach Wilson. I gave up a second, so this looked terrible until it didn't. And, this week, Wilson looks better, and I'm glad I made the move because now I have Wilson and, just another quarterback that somebody else might be interested in having. Here I got, basically I got Brissett, and that was last year when he was starting, and I was able to just acquire him for a third. So, whoever I would have picked in the third round, would have been, it's possible I would have gotten Michael Wilson, which I would have liked, but you know what? My team will be okay without Michael Wilson. And at that time, that really made a big difference in the Brissett, in who the balance of power in the league, and allowed me to keep the quarterback position a position of strength. And so what the punt was really a guy like Michael Wilson. And, honestly, that early, I wouldn't have probably taken Michael Wilson and probably would have taken somebody that was kind of a pointless quarterback at that third spot and would be just sitting in my taxi right now taking up space. So it really wasn't it didn't cost me much. It was kind of a free square. Michael Thomas, I'm starting all the time, so trading him away for that second this year feels like a pretty good move to me. I really was short on receivers at that time, and I just went and got him and figured, okay, he can start if he plays, and he's playing, and so that seems to make some sense. And glad I did that. I look back and say, okay, that was a good move. Like whoever I would have gotten in the second round, Josh Downs, is a possibility. Maybe it would have been nice, but this allowed me to have Michael Thomas, and I really thought I could get points out of him last year, so it made sense to me at the time. Looking at that trade. This one, somebody wanted to move up in the third round, and I let him, and I took a free square, and it looks like Marshall's has a role this year, so it makes sense. And it was, probably the player I was looking for in the third round. I probably still got somebody equivalent, so it worked out for me. So it was a trade that made sense. Looking at this trade, this was, something that, I basically was able to pick up something and in 2022 and just really build the team a little bit. And I did sell my 2023 first, which I'd gotten back. But this was a lesson for me. Trading away those your future firsts when you don't win money never makes any sense. So I would probably not make this trade ever again because it was a rookie mistake, we'll call it, and it's just something that I've learned from, just not trading away my first at this time of the year unless I'm making money on the deal. So, good for him. He got me good. Here, I thought Clyde Edwards-Helaire had a chance last year, and I traded away Connor. It is what it is. Like I'm actually rather have the younger player. It was a good gamble. Didn't work, but at least it was a good gamble. At least I took a risk with it. And I knew I needed running backs and needed to get young, so it was what it was, right? And then this was that startup pick, right? So this is where I got that extra first, and I traded my fourth round pick, or that quarterback that was drafted there, and I got the seventh round pick, and I got a first. So that was a trade that I enjoyed making and made sense, and it was a player I really didn't want to draft. So, it really helped me in that regard. So that's kind of what the reason for the trades that I make. And I guess that's kind of, in a nutshell, what I try to accomplish. So, looking forward to this week, real excited for the team and where we are. Realize that we're a little quiet on the running back room. If we really needed to, I also don't like a lot of big decisions to make. So, I did have some decisions at quarterback. Like I could start Brock Purdy. I could start Daniel Jones, I guess. there's some decisions there. Maybe Sam Howell. But realistically, I'm just there with going to start my guys, and there's not a whole lot of decisions, waiting for some health to happen. And I guess I feel like, need to build the running back room. It's going to be a point of emphasis for me, but not going to give up any of the strength that I have. So like that Mark Andrews trade's a trade I would make, right? Like that one makes sense to me. And so if I got something like that where, I do that, but if somebody wants like, good example. If somebody wanted to come get Dobbs from me, I'm probably not selling it because he's worth more on my bench, making sure the points stay low, so that when the points are low, that means they can't score as many, means I don't have to have as many. And unless I get somebody that's going to score, right now I'm sitting in my starting lineup, and if I take Zay Jones out, what if he has a week? And let's say he just scores the average of his 12 points this week, and you give me somebody that scores 15. Well, shit, I got 3 points. Like, I don't want to give you 20. Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, it's not logical to give you 15. Maybe Josh Dobbs only does 15 this week, but you have to take 0, or you've got to put some guy in there that's a schloozy, like, and now we're playing. It just doesn't make sense for me to give up the position of strength. I'd much rather, you have to, start PJ Walker in your quarterback spot or something like that. So this week, quite honestly, it's tight. It's tight. I'm playing somebody that I'm projected for 134, and they're 132. Like, it, what? There's not a whole lot of room for me to give them a whole bunch of points. Like, I can't afford to. I want to sit as many quarterback points on my bench, because if something happens with that Carr doesn't start, I guess I want that to be that, Carr's in the lineup. Like, he didn't have another option to put somebody else in there, and that's where we are. Or Carr doesn't have a week. I don't want there to be another option, and I'll take the chance that he can put Boston Scott in or Antonio Gibson. Like, that doesn't matter to me. Like, he can put them in for Tutu Atwell. Like, I don't know. Like, AJ Dillon. Like, those are all guys that are all interchangeable to me, and so I don't really want to start any of them over Jacoby Myers. Like, they don't move the needle enough. So, it would have to be like Devontae Adams, except for that I don't buy Devontae Adams in Dynasty. It would have to be Tyreek Hill, but I don't buy Tyreek Hill. So when I'm looking at the team I'm playing, there's not anybody I'm buying here. Like, I'm not going to buy them to give up anything. I'm not convinced. So I have some Tutu Atwell, but I don't want to buy Tutu Atwell because he's at a ceiling price. Like, so that's the other thing on trades. I don't ever want to buy at a ceiling. Like, I was just kind of looking at my Zach Moss shares, and I have some, but I bought them at the discount store. So that's what we want to do. We want to always buy things at the discount store. We don't want to buy them at high prices. I found myself this year buying tons and tons of Jamar Chase because he's cheap right now. So that's why I want to buy him. I want to buy him at that price. If I'm going to own Jamar Chase, it's going to be the buys now, like, because I think he's a better player than he's playing. So, that's when I want to buy people. I don't want to buy them when they've already played well. So, I was selling Garrett Wilson before the year. Like, that's because he played really good last year. So we're going to sell him. And I kind of thought, well, maybe I'll buy him back when he doesn't play well or gets hurt or something happens. And so, that's kind of how we do it. We sell when the value's high and buy when the value's low. So that's kind of an update on the Dynasty Dogs. We're real excited, though, as in general, where this team is and where it's heading. 2-2, the record. It's not. We obviously like to be better, but real excited. Going to try to get a win against the Blazing Asians this week and take this team towards the playoffs. Get in the playoff hunt. So we're going to really rely a lot on Cam Akers, Breece Hall to really have weeks for us, and really like Komet to play against a good Washington defense, and make this whole thing work. So, going to wrap this thing up. If you do have questions, by all means, hit the like button on this, hit the subscribe button so you see when we're going to come live to the podium each and every week. But more than that, put the questions right there in the comment section. We'll try to answer all those questions on this build, what the team is, what it looks like, and where we're heading. So for now, that's going to be all, and we'll take your questions right in the comment section, and we'll try to answer each and every one of them. So thank you very much for coming, and we'll see you next time.